So I want to talk more about your fund, but also I want to talk a bit more about before you started fund. So you joined JAFCO America Ventures,
Yeah.
and then you finally became a GP there, I suppose. And then you also managed Copan Ventures, which is a Munich-based venture fund. And then after that, you, I think, became a CEO of Kauffman Fellows, and then started Sozo Ventures, right?
Yeah, I'll walk you through the journey real quick because it might be
Yeah.
useful for people to see how these things. I think, especially in venture, but often in life, are a series of opportunities, sometimes coincidence, sometimes accident.
Lots of serendipity, I guess.
The firm I was with when I was at Copan Fellows, an extraordinary group of people, but they had some dysfunction. They ended up removing their founding partner, who I was tied to as a Kauffman Fellow, which was quite interesting experience, to see that kind of trauma. And I ended up staying, and I liked the guys, but one of the senior partners there was aware of the new president being hired at JAFCO, and his daughter, who ended up becoming a very prominent international venture capitalist based out of London, he would always say to me, "Don't stay here. Don't stay in Boston. It's too small. It's too parochial. You need to use this international experience." And when this guy calls, he's like,
the Kauffman is based in Boston?
No. When you do when the fellowship is, so when you do your fellowship, it's funded out of Kansas City, out of the foundation, but it's a practicum. So what they do is they place you in venture all over the country. So my class was a couple in Boston, a few in New York, many in Silicon Valley, North Carolina. We were all over the country, and then we would fly and gather every quarter for education, but we were mostly just off in the firm working.
I see. Yeah, makes sense.
So it was kind of a funny situation because this guy's like an old gruff guy. He doesn't say much. He walks into my office. He's like, "Pick up the phone." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Just pick up the phone and talk." And so I pick up the phone. I go, "Hello." And the other guy on the end, he goes, "Hello." I said, "Dan told me to talk to you." And he said, "Well, it's funny. Dan told me to talk to you." I said, "So what's going on?" He said, "Well, I've just taken this job at JAFCO, and I'm sort of I'm trying to find the right kind of talent. And he said, you might be loose in the socket," meaning like I might be leaving. I might be thinking of leaving. I might be getting fired, whatever that meant. I'm like, "Oh, I have no idea." I said, "Oh, am I?" And he said, "Well," and we started laughing. And I said, "Well, what are you looking for?" And he said, "This is, so this is 95. This is before international ventures." Like, "Well, I'm looking for somebody who has tier one venture experience, but also sales and marketing experience in Japan with some language ability." I said, "Okay, today that's not a very hard spec." But back then he said, "So how long is your list?" And he said, "You are my list." So I've never, because I don't know. And I said, "Frankly, I probably am the only person who checked those two boxes." So we flew out, ended up joining there, and I joined as an associate, and eventually was a general partner in the second and third fund there. Our second fund, USIT2 Vintage 97, was an extraordinary success. It returned just shy of 16 times cash on cash. One of the best performing funds of all time. And we, like a lot of firms, we were not ready for that kind of success. And we started to fly apart, and our key guy left, and then another guy left, and then I got recruited away to a fund out of Munich. And actually it's, again, another story. Is this kind of detail helpful?
Sure. Yeah. Your story, how you became a capitalist. So
yeah. So it's another, it was kind of interesting. It's another kind of an accident where I got a call from a headhunter, and I've known her. She goes, "I need your help." I said, "What is it?" She goes, "I've got this guy. He founded and built all of Microsoft Europe. He reported to Bill Gates for 17 years. He's trying to hire somebody in Valley for his firm. He's got 2 other European operating guys. And he just can't find the right guy. We sent him like 50 people. He's rejected everybody." And I was at Kauffman. I was on the board. I wasn't running it yet, but I always loved to meet. I would always meet fellow travelers, especially international venture people. She said, "Would you meet with them?" I go, "Sure. I will." So I went and had breakfast with him. And from the second we sat down, we started arguing. And he said, you know, he's got this guy who built Microsoft Europe. He's got another guy who ran Deutsche Telekom's broadband group. He's got another guy who built half of Amazon Europe. He's like, we need an operating guy in the Valley. And I was like, last thing you need is an operating guy. That's crazy. Like, you don't need an operating. You need somebody like, why do you think venture is so easy? How are you going to do venture? How are you going to structure deals? How are you going to turn all these advantages into a product? We argued for like 3 hours at the Sheridan breakfast place. Like, and I come away, I'm exhausted. I'm like, I feel so bad. I feel this guy's visiting my country. I'm not usually like that, but God, we were just going at it. And so this lady calls me and she's and I'm like, oh gosh, here it goes. And she calls me. I'm like, Mark, I'm so sorry. It's like, what did you do to him? And I go, oh, I was going to try to tell her it was terrible as this. I didn't even get it. She goes, he loves you. I'm like, what? I go, we argued for 3 hours. She goes, don't you know? And I said, don't I know what? She said, Bill Gates's measure of a person is their willingness and ability to argue a point. And at Microsoft, everything's based on debating and arguing. And he wants to cancel his trip or cancel his flight home and meet with you all day tomorrow. He wants to. And I said, well, I'm not looking. I'm employed, I'm working for a venture firm. And she said, well, do you want to talk to him? And I said, he's a pretty interesting guy. My firm is kind of falling apart. I want to learn more. And so I ended up staying. And we talked, and then he's like, I think you should, you know, think about joining us. And his 2 other partners were coming in the next week. And I met with them. I had dinner. You know, little did I know I brought a really cool, obscure bottle of wine. And little did I know they were both wine collectors, and they wanted someone on the team who knew California wines. So there's all these funny coincidences. And I ended up joining them, and I was there for about 4 years.